Hey, it's Kate, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make my little bundle baby, which was my Christmas market bestseller this year. I'm starting with 2 layers of flannel, and I'm going to trace my little body piece onto these layers with a pencil, and I'm going to pin those layers together and cut that out with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I do a market every year, but this year I didn't because I've been focused on this channel and have been getting an increasing number of orders for dolls. So that's a good thing. But my mother-in-law asked me to make a few items just to fill in the gaps because she takes up a whole room with the stuff she sells. So I was happy to do that for her. So I am now cutting out my face pattern piece. I traced it onto 1 layer of calico cotton, and I'm cutting it with 1/4 inch seam allowance around the curved edge of the head, and then the bottom edge, which is the neck opening, I'll cut right on the line. So now I'm just doing a dot to dot with my little face template, and then I will fill that in. You can also put it behind the pattern piece and hold it up to a window or use a light pad and trace it. And I will be putting a list of all the materials you need in the video description. So now I'm tracing my hair piece. I usually use flannel or calico cotton for this part, but today I'm using kind of a linen fabric, and it kind of gives it a little bit of a more rustic look, which I really like. And I'm cutting around this curved edge again with 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then I will cut right on the line as I cut out the hairline here. What I'll also include in the description is a link to the free printable pattern pieces. Everybody loves a free pattern. I know I do, so I love to provide one whenever I can. So now I'm going to trace another head piece for the back of the baby's head. And again, for that straight edge at the bottom, I'm going to cut right on the line. And then around the curve, I will give myself 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now I'm going to trace my bow onto 2 layers of a stretchy fabric. You can use a jersey or something synthetic, more synthetic, and you just want to make sure it has a good amount of stretch. And I'm going to sew that a little bit later, and I like to sew before I cut whenever I can. And then I didn't cut that there, but it's about 9 inches long and 2 inches wide on the fold. So now I'm going to use a zigzag stitch to secure the hairline. And sometimes I do a straight stitch along that edge and it frays a little bit and it has a really cute effect. But I really wanted these to be more finished for the Christmas market, so I decided to do a zigzag stitch. And it's almost like an applique. You just want to set it a little bit smaller than the standard setting and a little bit shorter for your zigzag stitch. When I pause to adjust, I always make sure my needle is on the skin colored fabric to turn it, and then I'll keep going. But that's where you want the most accuracy. So I'm just going along this hairline edge. And I have a couple of little threads here that I'm going to trim. And then I'll add a few little curved seams on the hair just to give it kind of a little bit of dimension. And I switched to brown thread for this part, which I forgot to mention before the zigzag stitch, but you probably don't want to use white thread to make your hair lines. So the reason this makes such a great item for a Christmas market is that I've realized that most people are going to buy gifts for family members somewhere between $10 and $30. And this fits right into that little category. So I'm opening up my body pieces and I'm taking the one with the lines drawn and I'm facing my face head piece, lining up that edge. And then I'm going to sew across that neck with about a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And I start with a back stitch and just go right across this edge. And you want your lines on the same side so that you can sew around the whole thing and sew right on the line once you've attached your head pieces to your body pieces. So I'm doing the same with the back piece. And then I'm going to face these two pieces towards each other. And I'll start by matching up these seams on the sides of the neck. And I'll pin those first. And like I've said in past tutorials, I'm not a big pinner and I kind of regretted it on this one because I should have added more pins. Pinning is a good thing and it helps keep everything lined up. So I do encourage putting as many pins as you feel are necessary. So I'm just making sure everything lines up and I'm going to pin at the top of the head and then work my way around towards the bottom. One lady said she wanted to buy a bunch of these for her grandkids, but she was afraid that she would end up they would end up using them as bowling pins. I had to laugh at that. So you'll have a mark on your pattern piece, but you're going to start right at the edge of that flat edge at the bottom and just sew all the way around the stall right on the line that you've drawn. And when I get to the neck, I switch to a smaller stitch, probably a 1 millimeter, and that just makes for a more secure head seam because we're going to be stuffing the head really firmly to get rid of any bunching on the seam. So I'm working my way back down the other side. And I left that bottom straight edge opened because that's where we will stuff the doll. And I'm just snipping the curves, one on each side of the neck, and then around the curve of the head, I'm snipping the seam allowance. And that just makes for a smoother curve when you stuff the doll. All right, and I turned it right side out and I'm ready to make the bow. I was about to say stuff, but looks like we're making the bow first. So I sewed on the line around that bow and left a small opening, which is also indicated on your printable pattern pieces, just to turn the bow right side out. And I'm cutting after I sewed with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I'm just going to clip the sharp curves, which again just helps to smooth out those seams once you've turned it right side out. All right, now I'm using my hemostats, which I highly recommend and I will link below. Oh, if you're going to make dolls, trust me, you got to get yourself some hemostats. They change everything. I use mine about 10 times a day probably, but I'm just getting this bow all turned out and pushing all the corners and seams out. And then I'll start on the headband. All right, and I'm going to make some dots to show you where I'll begin and end, but I'm leaving some space right at the end. I sewed along that edge with a zigzag stitch so it would have some stretch, and then I turned it right side out, and now I'm going to sew these two edges together. And I don't worry about sewing that up, but I do fold it and sew across that seam 3 times. Right, and now I'm ready to tie the bow on. And I like to fold the ends of the bow. That makes it a lot easier to tie these. And I'm just going to work with this until I get the look that I like. You kind of have to do some tugging and pulling and until you get it positioned. And I try to get that seam in that knot so that you can't see it. All right, the bow's done. Now it's time to stuff the doll. I'm going to bunch this up like a sock so that I have easy access to the head, and I'm just going to stuff the heck out of this doll's head. Um, that's something I see a lot is not enough stuffing, and you need to stuff it really firmly to maintain the structure of the head and to smooth out the bunched seams on the edge. So what I like to do is I just push stuffing into that side seam. That helps the head to have a little bit of a flatter structure on the face. You don't want the face to round out too much. And it also helps to smooth out those head seams because they tend to like to bunch. So I'm just working it in. My motto is stuff, 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 and then stuff some more. You just want to get it nice and firm, and it's like sculpting. If it's not the shape you like or you cannot get it to look right, take your stuffing out and try again. Stuffing is finicky and doesn't always cooperate, but you have to make it cooperate. So I'm just working this in. I use my hemostats here because there's a spot there that's just not quite right. So I finally get it the way I like it, and I'm going to sew up the bottom seam with a ladder stitch. And I love to use upholstery thread to sew up my openings in my dolls. It's just very sturdy and it doesn't tangle easily, and I know it's going to hold up. So I'm just going in with a ladder stitch here. I like to pull my raw edges out so that I can see exactly how far I am away from the edges. And we're going to get this done. I love a good ladder stitch. It's so satisfying when you get to pull it closed. And when I pull this closed, I will have it bunch up a little bit. And that gives it a nice rounded bottom. And then I snag a little piece of fabric right by the exit of the string and put it back in that opening once I've knotted it. Now I'm going to embroider the face. I learned this trick from a subscriber who is a professional embroiderer, and she showed me how to pull that thread out without having to pull it apart, and I love it. And I cut that piece in half, and so I'm going to go in with 2 threads. I just put one little knot at the end because I want to pull it through the fabric to hide it. And here I'm just doing an outline stitch. So my thread is coming out, my needle is coming out under the thread, but it's just staying right on that line. And then when I get to the eyelash there at the end, I'll do a very shallow fly stitch. So you can see the thread is under my needle now. And I'm going to wrap the thread around my needle and stick it right back in under that little dip and pull the knot through, and it just disappears. And I can use my needle to tuck that thread in, and now we can do the other side. I had to trim the tail there. And don't be afraid to just take your time with this part, especially if you're new to embroidery. Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. That's my motto. And I probably say that every single tutorial because I need to hear it. I like to rush through things and I always regret it when I do. So again, I'm just hiding that thread and she's almost done. I'm just going to add a little blush to her cheeks. I like to use a colored pencil, but you can use makeup or whatever you want. Don't be afraid to make this your own, and that's what doll making is all about. It's about letting your own creativity take over and shine. And I'm putting my little bow on here, and I just love how this turns out. It's just really simple and cute and has a polished look, and I can just see this in the arms of a little baby. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this. Don't forget to subscribe if you love doll making, and I will see you next time. Bye.